Welcome into Bucs Insider, coming to you from the Bucs studio, presented by Ticketmaster. Casey Phillips here with senior writer and editor Scott Smith and staff writer Bri Dix, and we got a Bucs win to talk about. It's Thanksgiving week. We have plenty to be thankful for this week.
For sure.
Very handy, and I'm sure just in general, going to do Thanksgiving dinner with friends and family, a lot more fun coming off of a win for everyone involved on this team. So excited to talk about so many things, and one is there were big plays in this game, something that I think we'd been lacking a little bit in the games before. So, Scott, tell us a little bit about especially this explosive plays that we saw really come to life in New York.
I think we talked about it last week. You weren't here because you left us
and you missed
stranded.
Me. You missed me so much.
But I think we talked about the fact that in the previous two games before the bye, the Bucs had really lacked explosive plays. And we all rightfully credited both Liam Cohen and Baker Mayfield for keeping the offense moving pretty decently after the injuries to Mike Evans and Chris Godwin. But what was missing was explosive plays, and Baker Mayfield himself talked about it. So it's hard to score like you want to score when every drive has to be methodical. You know, we saw at the opening of the Giants game, we saw a methodical 14-play, 8.5-minute drive. That was great, but you're not going to get a million of those a game. You need some explosive plays to cut the field in half and get some shorter drives and score some more points, because those methodical drives, you can always make one mistake and kill it. Well, in the two games before the bye, the Buccaneers had 0 plays of 20 or more yards, 0. And they'd been averaging a little more than 4 of them per game leading up to that. So that was clearly a problem. And the points were slowly going down. Well, in this game, Mike Evans being back definitely had something to do with it, but the Buccaneers had 6 plays of 20 or more yards, and 5 of those were receptions by 5 different players.
Incredible.
After the San Francisco game, we talked about how that was the difference. The Bucs couldn't get explosive plays, and the 49ers had, I think, 5 different players have an explosive play. And that's like the ideal. And that's what the Buccaneers got in that game. And so, you know, they got 5 different guys catching passes, and then plus I think you saw in one of these clips here just a few seconds ago, obviously Bucky Irving had that 56-yard run. So 6 explosive plays totally made the difference. That's why the Bucs got back to scoring 30 points in the game. Yeah,
and it's so true, because not only is it, I love that it's not just explosive plays, but to so many different people, right? You talked about there was all those passes were to 5 different people. They also just threw passes to 11 different people. That is incredible. And I on our show Monday, we had Chris Godwin on, and he was like, I don't think I knew we had 11 eligible receivers on this team.
We had 12.
And
Co Kieft was the only one.
And that's what they said. They were like, oh, Co, come on.
Actually, there were 13 because Vita Vea was eligible for 2 plays
Which,
as
again,
a fullback.
I'm very upset. Both Co and Vita didn't get a pass now.
I need to see that.
Now we're spoiled. I want to see all of it.
We have seen a Vita Vea touchdown.
We have gotten to witness that. We'll try to make sure you get to witness one in your time here as well, because it's majestic and wonderful. But yeah, 11 different people caught a pass, and then of course that also leads into 4 different people scored a rushing touchdown,
which has never happened.
Which has never happened
Bucs history before.
In franchise history. And also, we already have more rushing touchdowns than we had all of last season.
3 more.
Yeah, a lot more.
There's 6 games to go.
It wasn't very long before we were going to surpass that total. But I just felt like, as much as you talked about the explosive plays, I was like, man, I want to talk about this run game a little bit, because for one thing, the Giants' strength was their defensive line and their defensive front. Guys like Brian Burns, guys like Dexter Lawrence in there, that was going to be the strength of their team. And for the first time, I mean, in franchise history, to have all those different players rush for a touchdown. And then also the team overall rushed for 156 yards as a team, which is the 3rd most in a game this season. And we have at least 100 rushing yards in 8 of our 11 games. Only had 6 games over that last year. And then this is the stat that I think is the most exciting when you just look at the rushing game so far this year for us. We're 6th in the lead in yards per attempt. That was not the stat the last couple years.
Last?
Yes.
Last. Dead last.
Dead last the last few years. To go from that to 6th is incredible. And I think that, of course, we have to give credit to guys like Bucky. We saw his big, run that he had, and of course, maybe even credit to Baker for his blocking on that. But really, of course, we have to give the offensive line so much credit.
100%.
And I know we've done that a few times recently, but especially this week. And I love that Coach Bowles mentioned it both in his press conference and my show, just what a great job those guys are doing. And he specifically shouted out Graham Barton and Cody Mauch. That he said, you forget their 1st and 2nd year players. They've helped us from a strength, attitude, and intelligence standpoint. And then he said Cody goes more unnoticed. You know, he talked about how everybody loves to talk about Tristan and Luke, and even Graham is a rookie. But he's like, Cody we don't talk about him as much. but he was talking about how he's done an incredible job and that he's put on some weight, improved his technique, and isn't getting pushed back like he was some last year. And then he said Graham is playing like a 2 or 3 year guy in terms of making the calls at the line. And I think that's definitely something that fans don't always know to appreciate, is how much weight are you taking off of Baker, how much are you also then communicating to the rest of the line, and that for rookie centers, sometimes you don't even ask them to do that very much if you don't trust them to do it or believe in it. And I remember even hearing, when Jason Kelsey retired from the Eagles, that all of a sudden Jalen Hurts was having to do all of that, and it was like, he was talking about like, whoa, this is a load on me that I hadn't been having to do. So the more your rookie center can already be doing in that area, that's a great sign for moving forward and what that's going to mean. And then, of course, also Justin School did a great job in Tristan's wake. That I know that we had wondered how that was going to go, because especially when he had to come in the Lions game and go against Aiden Hutchinson, that's rough for anybody.
Right.
So I think this was a great sign of seeing that, again, against a good defensive front that the Giants have, that School hung in there really tough. You didn't notice. And that's the goal of an offensive lineman, is to kind of not notice them.
Remember when Tristan Wirfs was switching from right tackle to left tackle, and everybody, including him, talked about how that could be a really hard transition? Think about the fact that a swing tackle in the NFL, like Justin School, has to know how to play both sides.
Week to week, at any point.
And he has. And he's played. The Detroit game was tough, as you said, but since then, he's really filled in nicely. And 4 other starts on both sides, that can't be easy. And also, we didn't plan this, but I ran across Jason Light this morning as I was coming into the building. And I talked to him about the fact that I'd heard that before the game on Sunday, he predicted that our offensive line was going to have a great game, and specifically mentioned Ben Bredeson going back to play the Giants. And I thought, that's a really bold prediction to make in this game, because as we talked about last week, the Giants' main strength is their pass rush. That's their best thing. They were leading the league in sacks per pass play, and they got no sacks and 2 quarterback hits, and Dexter Lawrence was mostly a non-factor. And he was just raving about the fact that Ben Bredeson was like a Shaq Barrett type of signing,
That's
in that
amazing.
you got him at a very reasonable cost, and then he's made a huge impact.
That's awesome. And then, of course, we talked about the Giants, the defensive front being their strength. Our defensive front was one of our strengths in this game, 100%. I think we did what they wished they could have done. Vita and Kalijah, just this little 1-2 punch out there. Tell us, I mean, we all saw they were doing amazing things, but tell us what you noticed about their production and what they ended up meaning to this defense.
Yeah, well, big day overall for the Bucs pass rush. 4 players got sacks. She mentioned Kalijah Cansey, Vita Vea, and then Antoine Winfield Jr. and Anthony Nelson. But Kalijah Cansey, Vita Vea, they have a combined 11 sacks, and they've laughed that they're both trying to one-up each other. They're both battling to get double-digit sacks. But I think you just see how they complement each other. They're playing at an elite level. You have Vita Vea that has that raw power, is able to drive blockers back. And then you have Kalijah that, coming out of Pitt, the big thing with him was that explosive first step, the quickness, the change of direction. And you're seeing the fruition of that. But then you have guys like Anthony Nelson that it seems like every single time he's put in there, he's making an impact, whatever sub-package it is. And then even just on, I mean, Todd Bowles was relentless in bringing pressure on Tommy DeVito, who only had 3 completions in the entire first half. They totaled 45 yards, which was the least amount that the Bucs have given up in a single half this season. So you're just starting to see all of those elements, I think, come into play, and that starts with their ability to get push in the interior.
Yeah, I mean, I just think it was such a big game for the defense overall. Hold them to 45 yards in the first half. That's unbelievable. And I just feel like we saw kind of all the levels working well together. And of course, like you said, it helps that they're getting that push. They're not letting them have all day to sit back there and throw. It helps everybody.
Producer Cody, can we do requests? I don't know if you can do requests.
Like, are we calling in? Are we like phoning a friend?
Can you play that Vita Vea sack again? I don't know how easy that is to just call up on the spot. I would love to see that again and comment on it.
That's true. It was one of the most incredible things from
I
a
can see him working in there.
strength point.
A grown man.
It's funny
It's
because
not nice what he did to that person.
He makes it look like he's playing. You know how with like kids sports they have like the
Here it
age
is.
and weight divisions. He looks
That's
like
that's unkind.
He looks like he's the kid playing down in age or
Oh, my
weight class.
goodness.
Yes.
That's like, hey, let's check his birth certificate.
Thanks,
He shouldn't be
Cody.
out here with these guys. Like,
Thanks, Cody.
The bull in a china
It was
shop.
funny because that's the play that obviously the Elijah was talking about when he spoke to the media on Monday, and he said it's like he's not mean. He's in the huddle before the play, laughing and making jokes. He's like he's not pissed off. And then he goes out and he does that to a grown man. What would he
How do
look
you
like
do
if he
that
was pissed off?
Not angry, yeah.
Yeah, that
love
highlight says all you need to know.
That
about
was
him,
pretty
man.
incredible. Well, I know that we talked about how the bye week was very well timed for, it seems like, a reset, some injury recoveries.
Yes.
It was great to have Mike Evans back out there and Jamel Dean back out there. But of course, now we have some other new injuries, things to look back at and to see who might be coming back when. So we don't, because we're shooting this Wednesday morning, we don't have an injury report yet. But what are you going to be keeping an eye on going into this game?
Well, so it's expected that Jordan Whitehead's going to miss extended time with that pectoral injury. We still don't know kind of the full diagnosis of that yet. Todd Bowles is going to give us more on that today. But he did confirm that Joe Tryon-Shoyinka has a sprained ankle. We're not sure of the severity of that or how much time he's going to miss. And then Baker Mayfield exited the game briefly with that neck stinger, but of course, Baker being Baker immediately came back in. And then Tristan Wirfs last week with that foot knee injury did a little bit, practice in a limited fashion, a little bit with the second team. So we'll see kind of how he's able to progress, what he does this week, along with Tyke Smith with the knee injury.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what Tristan does in practice. It was good news that he was on the practice field at all last week,
Right.
but he wasn't taking a lot of team drill snaps and a lot of first team snaps, and so that was a good indication that they didn't expect him to be able to play, but I bet you he's close.
I also feel like of the injuries that have happened, we have to be really reassured by the fact that, okay, so Tristan, depending on when he comes back and what level he's at, I mean, just in school did really well.
Yeah.
And then the timing of Jordan Whitehead missing time and us having signed Mike Edwards, pretty incredible on that front. And then Tyke Smith, who's been incredible. But man, Coach has just praised Christian Izzian so highly. In this league, it is not that common, I think, for a starter and star player to get hurt and it not be an incredibly noticeable
Because you don't
drop-off.
normally have a backup that's anywhere
Yes.
close.
And that, to me, is what is so interesting about these specific injuries of like, if this is what you're going to have injury-wise at this point, this crucial time in the season, I feel like it's great to know that, like, hey, we have people at each of these spots that we feel really good about. So now let's get into some Bucs trivia. Bri, give us our question for everyone to answer.
Okay.
Oh, by the way, last week I read one that you would have known.
You did that on purpose.
I did.
You did that
He
on
did.
purpose.
He did.
Unbelievable. Which means I'm not going to know the one today.
You're not gonna know
I've
this
already,
one.
I've already
You're not gonna know
accepted
this
it.
Okay, so Mike Evans had 207 receiving yards against the Panthers on January 1st, 2023. But he's not the only Buccaneer with a 200-yard receiving game against Carolina. Who is the other one?
No, nothing.
If I'm not going to, now I'm like, well, it's obviously nobody obvious. I don't know, maybe like Carrier, someone that's like a.
Mark Carrier last played for the Buccaneers in 1992.
Yeah. That's, I thought, I don't know, maybe.
Carolina Panthers didn't exist
It right now. It was right.
in 1992.
Take it.
The
That's what happens when I try to guess. I
brought-
just picked an obscure person.
The thing about Mike is we would love him to have another 200-yard game against them.
Yeah.
Because he's got that whole. I don't think it's foremost on anyone's mind. It would be great if it happened if he got to 1,000 yards for the 11th straight season. Once he came back, he needed to get 95 per game, and he got 68 against the Panthers because we didn't throw a pass in the fourth quarter. So it was situational. He probably would have gotten there. But now he has to almost exactly get 100 yards per game down the stretch, which he's capable of. But you don't normally get 100, 100, 100, 100.
Yes.
He's going to need one or
big
two
game.
big games. And it'd be nice if it happened against the
That
Panthers.
would be very handy. I have another guess, but I don't want to say it out loud.
Go ahead.
I don't know, maybe Vincent Jackson?
That's a good guess.
thank you.
That's not correct, but that is
Aw.
absolutely.
I'll take credit
that's
for it being a
great
good guess.
Yes.
I'll
It was a good effort.
I tried. I had to redeem myself after they didn't exist then, so I had to do something else. All right, so milestones we're tracking.
Oh, I forgot what it was. What is it?
Baker, and then, you have your Baker passer rating.
So Baker had finished that game against the Giants with a 107.5 passer rating, which is good, but not off the charts, right? But think about the fact that he didn't throw a touchdown pass because we kept getting stopped at the 1 yard line and running it in, which is fine. Any way you get the ball in, I don't care. But he didn't have a touchdown pass, and he had a 107.5 passer rating. So I looked it up. That's the best single game passer rating in Buccaneers history when you didn't throw a touchdown pass.
Wow.
Which all that does is show you how unbelievably efficient he was in that game, right?
That's amazing. And I love how he keeps doing interesting things with passer ratings. Of like he had the Green Bay game with the perfect one, first person to do that in Lambeau. Like he keeps finding ways to have unique stats with passer ratings. He's like, you know what, whatever it takes, I'm going to get it done.
The only guys with a passer rating of 105 or better in a game when they didn't throw a touchdown pass are him, Kurt Warner in the early 2000s, and Ben Roethlisberger in like 2014. And plus, he gave us all this entertainment.
He was like, I felt like, especially with Gladiator coming out right now in theaters, he was the Are You Not Entertained?
Yes.
Like,
he's diving into the end zone.
So entertained.
He's blocking 50 yards downfield.
And I love. We also talked about this on our show Monday with Cam and Chris, that we were laughing that he's like, "Come on, Bucky, this way." Like,
I know where you should run.
One of our
How about
favorite
this
things.
one?
Yeah. Oh, the
only
only
guy
person
and he has to
saw
run
it.
like 10 yards to get that fumble.
The only person.
I
on
was
the field.
laughing because it's like he didn't play quarterback. He just played
Here it is.
football.
Look, this
he
way.
did everything. It was just, he was doing everything.
He
He
had
was
like
a blocker,
15 more
he
yards
was
after
a
this.
running back.
You have to love it, and you know it inspires the whole team. You know they're like,
Flot.
if this guy's making these kind of effort plays, if this guy's doing this, and also he's getting a little skirmish on the sideline at one point. Like, I just love it. This was definitely like a moxie swag kind of game.
He blocked a guy named Flott. The guy's name was Flott. I just
It's not
noticed that.
great. It's not great. All right, so fantasy watch.
Oh,
What
hey,
are
it's my turn.
What are we looking at for you? On
Okay,
here?
so I think now, I've said in the past that the Bucs backfield from fantasy purposes is a difficult thing because you just never know.
Yeah,
and we
who's the guy
ran
today?
3 guys. I think now is the time that it's, if you have Bucky Irving's on somebody's team in your league. If you have him, you can start playing him week to week, every week now, I think. I think he's a safe play. If you look at it, he has over 11 points in 7 of the last 9 games. And generally, if you could start a guy and know he's going to get you 10 or 11 points, then you're fine with that. And maybe it'll be more, but you know you're going to get 10 or 11, you're cool. He's had over 11 points in 7 of the last 9 games, and his last 6 are 18.5, 16.7, 15.4, 6.4, 17.7, and 27.1 in this last game.
Wow.
So he's getting it done week after week after week. And now, in this last game, 2 things. For the first time all year, when both Rashad and Bucky were playing, he had more snaps than Rashad. And he had 6 targets in the passing game to 1 for Rashad. That's not to say anything negative about Rashad. It's just to say, if you're a fantasy owner of Bucky Irving, those were the hurdles. The hurdles were Rashad's still getting most of the playing time and Rashad's getting most of the targets. If that's not true anymore and it's Bucky going forward, this is a high-end number 2 running back in fantasy football.
Right. That's really interesting.
That's where I'm planting my flag this week.
Plant your flag.
Like it
You
down
can
the
start
hill.
Bucky and feel good about it.
Yes.
I like it. I think all Bucs fans feel good about Bucky right now.
Yeah, and they don't even care about fantasy football.
even
They just
without
like
that,
watching
we're
him break
just
tackles and
Hearing Bucky chants all the way in
juke
New
out
York.
12 guys.
Yeah. All right, so this is time for our human interest segment where we tell you something cool off the field about the team, and we couldn't decide between. There were 2 things, so we're just giving you both of them. It's our Thanksgiving
bonus.
gift.
It's a
Yes.
Thanksgiving
That we have
bonus.
so much to be thankful for about this team right now. So first of all, last night was turkey time with the O-line, everyone's favorite event. 18th annual, which is
That's so
pretty
great.
incredible.
Amazing.
It has been going on for so long. Here's a photo from last night. And of course, you have a few non-offensive linemen out there, and Luke's trademark turkey hat that he wears every year. I can't believe they found one big enough to fit him. But man, it was incredible to be out there. We fed over 1,000 meals to people. Yeah, it was wild. And these are amazing meals. I mean, you see the turkey there that they're holding, and then I mean they're getting stuffing and cranberry and this
I
and that, like
honestly
this
didn't
whole
know it
thing.
was that big.
Pies, like they get the tin to bacon. Like here's a shot of all the stuff, and it's of course thanks to Publix and Tico as well for all of their things. And then the offensive linemen help fund it as well, and then are there to help actually deliver the meals to everyone, which was really
It was
incredible.
started by Davin Joseph and Jeremy Trueblood in like 2007, and they must be very proud that their
This legacy.
future generations have kept it going.
Pretty incredible. So since it started, we've fed Thanksgiving meals to more than 14,500 underserved families.
That's fantastic.
Yep. So love that. Wanted to showcase that, but then also wanted to talk about the fact that we did have Chris Godwin on our show that I do with Cam Bri on Monday, and I know Bucs fans, I could tell when I tweeted out he was coming on, the response was like, oh my gosh, we're so excited to get to hear from him and see how he's doing. And so we just knew we wanted to also throw something about that on here. And first of all, we were so thankful to Chris for being willing to come on. He doesn't have to do that right now. He's got a lot going on trying to rehab. We were so appreciative of him, and it was great. We got to hear his insight on the game, the team. We talked a lot of football things, but then of course we also talked to him about life, his injury, what all that has been like. And I specifically asked him what it was like to see the fan outpouring of support out there, because I told him, I was like, man, most people don't get to really hear what people think of them in this way until you're done. that it's like until you're retired and then you get
Yeah.
that moment. But I said, you basically, it felt like got to have this moment
Now.
while you're still doing it, that people just felt this need to say what they thought of Chris and talk about him and his family. And I just asked what that was like for him to experience. So take a listen.
It was really damn cool to see. Like you said, like you don't typically get like your flowers until like, you're done whatever you're doing. But to just see the just outpour of support, like again, from Bucs fans, like, and also just like fans from across the league. The support was really, like, it really touched my heart, and it really like inspired me a lot. Like it helped me get through those first couple of days. Like, I'm very excited to get back to doing like what I love, and there's no doubt in my mind that I'll be back at the level that I was at.
Just very cool to hear him do that, and thanks to all the Bucs fans who showed their support. And we just talked about how he said he's so excited to get back to doing what he loves. And I'd asked him if he learned anything through the ACL injury that could apply to this, and he's like, I really learned patience. I learned that you cannot rush this, and I learned you just have to do what you got to do. It's not a direct linear upward thing, that there's ups and downs, and you just have to learn to deal with that. And so I feel like he just seemed like he's in a really good place now. He talked about that first couple weeks was rough, but now he said he's in a much better place, and he's got a little scooter he's scooting around on. He's got a basket in the front. It's so funny. He had like his water, and he had like a Theragun. It's like at any point I might need a therapy.
Well, I was loving that he was talking about his previous scooter was a hand-me-down from Vita Vea, and as you would probably imagine, the wheels were
Not working.
messed up and not working.
Yep, I was like, of all people to accept hand-me-downs
From Vita is probably not the person.
that's not it. That's not the person. So
It's like
I
a
thought that was pretty
6-year-old
funny.
getting hand-me-downs from his 12-year-old brother.
Exactly. Yeah. It's like this has already been worn
through the
hard,
ringer.
worn hard here. All right. So now let's get into this next game against the Carolina Panthers. It's so interesting. I love how the NFL, you just never know what's going to happen. You never know what teams are going to be. I think people really wrote the Panthers off probably week one. Really tough loss to start the year. Wrote them off, and of course they benched Bryce Young at some point, and you're like, this is a disaster. This is terrible. They're imploding. But man, I feel like Bucs fans knew how great Dave Canales is, and especially his attitude and approach to everything, and the way that can be infectious to the people around him. And I think we're seeing that now Bryce Young is back in there after Andy Dalton got hurt in that car wreck. He has been playing at a much higher level than those first few weeks. The team is playing better. They've gotten a couple wins, took the Chiefs all the way down to the wire. And so now this game, this next Sunday, I mean, man, we're kind of catching the Panthers at a time that they seem to be feeling pretty good about themselves. And I think it's actually going to therefore be a matchup where maybe at the start of the year you think, oh, here we are in basically December. They're going to have already laid down. They're going to have quit.
That would have been nice.
That would have been handy. We would have appreciated that. But it is really cool to see the way that it seems like Dave Canales' attitude has really gone into that team, and they have belief, they still have fight. And then I know Xavier Legette, they just showed him that, man,
He's coming on
he's
strong.
coming on strong for sure, and has the best accent in the whole league.
Yeah, the Bryce Young thing, I read up a little bit about it from their local media in the last couple days, just preparing for this game. And what I read a lot of was that Bryce Young, he came in the league as sort of a historic outlier in terms of his size. 5'10", but not just 5'10", but pretty slight. Not like a Russell Wilson or a Kyler Murray, who are kind of thick. So a lot of problems that quarterbacks of that size have is completing passes intermediate range down the middle.
Yep.
And indeed, he absolutely did struggle in that regard as a rookie and in the first couple days games this year. But from everything I'm reading, I don't know how Dave Canales and him have done it, but they've unlocked it, and he's actually succeeding over the middle now, which is really a huge step for him. And then also, Dave Canales was raving about his ability to extend plays and then make passes downfield, which was one of the big things in his scouting report coming out of Alabama, that he was a creative guy like that and could do that. You didn't see almost any of that as a rookie. I know that they benched him earlier in the year, and he only got his job back because of Andy Dalton's injury, but and at the time, it kind of looked like this could be the end. I think maybe now the Panthers are looking at this going, he could still be our long-term franchise quarterback.
Yep. And so, Bri, tell us about a couple of these other weapons he has at his disposal that we're going to have to be keeping an eye on.
Yes. Well, it's no secret they've struggled, as you said, and they're 31st in the league in total offense. But Chuba Hubbard has had an incredible season. He's playing as one of the top 5 running backs in the league. His 876 rushing yards ranks 5th in the NFL. And he's a guy that's just kind of tailor-made for the outside zone system. He's effective at navigating through traffic, kind of has that downhill prowess. And then Adam Thielen, back from the hamstring injury, he made an impact in his first game back. He had a 36-yard catch and run, and then he had a first down on fourth down late in the game that led to their game-tying touchdown. So, and he's a guy that kind of is a crafty route runner. He's good at manipulating DBs by creating separation. So I think they're going to try and probably work up his workload each week. So those are certainly two guys that the Bucs defense is going to have to key in on.
Yeah, Hubbard is playing well enough. He got a big new contract. Didn't he?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
They thought Miles Sanders was their big signing and he was going to be their main guy, but Hubbard really has emerged.
And then how about their defense? Who are some of the people we'll have to keep an eye on for them?
You know, you can't sugarcoat it. We're not here. We know that the Panthers are going to be very much of a challenge, and we've experienced that year after year, especially in Charlotte. So nobody expects this to be an easy game, but you can't ignore the fact that their defensive numbers are pretty bad. And that's not terribly surprising. They traded away Brian Burns before the season. They lost their next best defensive player, Derek Brown, to injury. They lost their tackle machine linebacker, Shaq Thompson, to injury. Those guys are out for the year. So it's not a horribly huge surprise that they're last in points allowed at 30.9, last in rushing yards allowed at 160.5 per game, last in third down rate allowed, 49.3%, and no one on that team has more than 3 sacks. But despite all of that doom and gloom about the Panthers, they do have some impact players on defense, and I would point out J.C. Horn, the cornerback, who was a first-round pick and has always been quite good when he's been on the field. He's just been injured for a lot of his career, but he's been healthy this year and he's playing well. A'Shawn Robinson, a guy that we remember as a Lion for a long time, also played for the Rams and the Giants. He's got 3 sacks and is doing a good job in the middle. And then Jadeveon Clowney doesn't have the big stats like he had last year with the Ravens, but he's always been an impact player despite the numbers. He's very good against the run, and he's good at getting pressure, and he's a guy that the Buccaneers will have to worry about.
All right, well, before we go, we want to remind everybody to vote on the Pro Bowl.
Yeah.
Send our guys there. We want to watch as many Buccaneers as possible. We got a lot of guys that are deserving of it. Let's be real. Look at all these people.
Who we got pictured
So
there?
we got Tristan, we got Levante, Baker, Antoine, Mike, and Vita, I think is the one squinting very hard. I think that's
You know
Vita.
who's not listed there, but should also get your support is kicker Chase McLaughlin.
I was just going to say that. That's so funny. Yeah, Chase, I feel like, has just been so...
He's missed 1 field goal.
Yeah, and I know he missed the extra point this week, but man, the wind was
bad.
no
yeah.
joke there
Yeah.
for sure. But he has been so reliable, so consistent, and his big leg has helped a ton of
So don't
getting
forget
these
him.
50-plus
I mean, you
yarders.
could just go into the Pro Bowl and vote for all the
All
Bucs
the
if you
Bucs,
wanted to.
yeah. Do it.
But if
Just-
you're going to try to be true and really say who should be, don't forget Chase.
Don't forget him. All right, so answer to our trivia question.
So the question was, who other than Mike Evans has had a 200-yard receiving game against the Carolina Panthers? And the answer is Antonio Bryant, not Antonio Brown. Antonio Bryant had 9 catches for 200 yards and 2 touchdowns on December 8th, 2008. Although that was in a game the Bucs lost, 38-23. But Antonio Bryant did his job. Antonio Bryant, that catch is one of my most memorable catches.
Wow.
The one, not that one, but the one in the end zone where
Yeah,
he
but
catches
man,
it
he
with
had
one hand.
multiple that were great.
Yeah, he put on a show that whole season. He was sort of a reclamation project that had been with the Cowboys. That catch right there.
Wow.
With the Cowboys and the Browns.
Spider-Man just...
Yeah, he was kind of a reclamation project when we got him. And he had a huge year, so huge that we gave him the franchise tag. And then he got hurt in 2009, hardly did anything, and never played again. But he had that one big year.
But he had that 200-yard game. Don't forget about that. All right, that's going to do it for us on this edition of Bucs Insider. Thank you so much for joining us. We hope you have a very safe and happy Thanksgiving with all of your friends and family. We'll see you next week.